At the center of the storm, the physical confrontation involving Senator Padilla. It happened right in front of correspondent Bill Malugin, and he's here to tell us what happened. Good evening, Bill.
Yeah, Aisha, good evening to you. DHS Secretary Kristi Gnome had been giving a press conference for just a few minutes or so when I heard somebody to my right yell out to her and interrupt her. I initially thought it was just a protester. Then I saw security grab that person, turn him around, and push him back. That's when I realized, oh, wow, okay, this is Senator Alex Padilla. I pulled out my phone and shot this video.
I'm Senator Alex Padilla. I have questions for the Secretary, because the fact of the matter is,
so you can see Secret Service agents getting physical with Senator Padilla. There was some pushing and shoving both ways. The senator yelled out, "I'm Senator Alex Padilla." They ultimately forcibly removed him from the room, but things continued out in the hallway. Take a look at this. Padilla staffers posted their own video of him being taken down to the ground by these agents. He was temporarily handcuffed before ultimately being released. Senator Padilla then held a press conference outside the building just a short time later.
if this is how the Department of Homeland Security responds to a senator with a question, you can only imagine what they're doing to farm workers, to cooks, to day laborers out in the Los Angeles community and throughout California and throughout the country.
Now, after the incident, Secretary Noem told us she had a 10 to 15-minute meeting with Senator Padilla, which she described as cordial and beneficial. She told us they exchanged phone numbers and opened up a line of communication.
He and I are probably not going to agree on probably 90% of things, but we both had left that room recognizing that if we have civil conversations, that we'll get to better results. And there was a few things in there we agreed on, and I informed him on the president's opinion and the president's executive authorities that he's exercising.
And the FBI here in LA put out a statement that's saying Senator Padilla was not wearing his Senate security pin. They say he was being disruptive, but that as soon as he was positively identified, he was released from custody. We'll send it back to you.
Bill Malugin live for us right there on the scene in Los Angeles. Thank you, Bill.
All right, John, an update to the situation we saw earlier at the press conference. Kristi Noem, the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, after this incident happened, while she was speaking, this is Senator Padilla. He was obviously forcibly removed after he tried to interrupt and barge in, for lack of a better word, into that news conference. He was thrown to the floor. He was temporarily detained, later met with the secretary in a room. We're still waiting to see what came from that. In the meantime, we've just received a statement from Senator Padilla after he was removed there. Senator Padilla is currently in L.A., exercising his duty to perform congressional oversight of the federal government's operations in L.A. and across California. He was in the federal building to receive a briefing and was listening to Secretary Noem's press conference. He tried to ask the secretary a question and was forcibly removed by federal agents, forced to the ground and handcuffed. He's not currently detained, and we are working to get additional information. All right, let's head now to Chad Pergram. He's reporting on all of this for us. Bill Malugin got that cell phone camera footage for us, which we've been showing our audience, Chad. Please do add to what you're learning about the situation.
Yeah, this is rather remarkable. You know, sometimes they give lawmakers some deference in situations like this. We had a comment here from Chuck Schumer, the Democratic leader. He said he was absolutely sickened by this. He was thundering. He was yelling so loudly in the Senate chamber to see this happen, as he put it, to a United States senator. You also had Ben Ray Lujan, who's a Democratic senator from New Mexico, who is rather soft-spoken and never speaks on the Senate floor. It's very rare. And he was just appalled that more of his colleagues weren't down here talking about this. He said, you know, what happens if this is a Republican who comes in? He said to have people being treated like this if they're a United States senator. Remember that this comes against the backdrop of LaMonica McIver, who was indicted just earlier this week after that standoff in New Jersey where she scuffled allegedly with these agents in New Jersey at that detention center there. There was a question put to one of our colleagues here, from one of our colleagues to John Thune. He says we have to kind of see what happens here. But Chuck Schumer, the Democratic leader, indicated, he said, we want a full investigation on this. I mean, the Democrats are absolutely apoplectic about this. As many of you know, I covered the congressional baseball game last night, and Senator Padilla was supposed to play first base for the Democrats. He did not play. He went back to California because of what was going on with the riots there. And so this has kind of come full circle here. Again, they give lawmakers, this isn't written down anywhere, a little bit of deference. But I think what got some of these Democratic senators so wound up is that he was thrown to the floor and handcuffed. Guys?
So, Chad, just to add to this, Bill Melugin has just put out an email to all of us that Noem has told him that she had a 10 to 15-minute meeting with Padilla, that they swapped phone numbers. They said the meeting was cordial and beneficial, and that Padilla said in that meeting, Chad, that he had concerns about ICE operations, and they opened a line of communication. Said it was a good meeting, things are okay between the two of them. All right, so that was the reaction that we got from that meeting that Bill had noted was happening behind closed doors, Chad.
And, you know, this is the thing that the Democrats are kind of struggling with right now, whether or not they're on the right side of these ICE protests. There's been some criticism in some Democratic circles, certainly moderate Democrats, that maybe, you know, they're being too deferential to liberals or those who are demonstrating in the street. But Democrats so far this year, you know, have really struggled to hone a message. And in some cases, you know, whether you're McIver, whether or not you're Padilla, it gives you a chance to stand up and show that you're fighting.
Thank you very much. It's good to have you with us today. We all saw what happened in the video of that room when he was physically taken out, and you heard just now his response, and I understand you had a personal conversation with him as well. So what do you want to say about all of this?
You know, what I would say is we were conducting a press conference to update everyone on the enforcement actions that are ongoing to bring peace to the city of Los Angeles. And this man burst into the room, started lunging towards the podium, interrupting me and elevating his voice, and was stopped, did not identify himself, and was removed from the room. So as soon as he identified himself, you know, appropriate actions were taken. But I would say that, you know, I had a conversation with the senator after this. We sat down for 10 to 15 minutes and talked about the fact that nobody knew who he was. He didn't say who he was, that until he was already had been lunging forward and people were trying to detain him for quite a period of time, and that this, you know, we're leaders, we're public servants, and if he had requested a meeting, I would have loved to have sat down and had a conversation with him. That coming into a press conference like this is political theater. It's wrong, and it does a disservice to this country and the people who live here. So we sat down, had a conversation. We probably disagree on 90% of the topics, but we agreed to exchange phone numbers. We'll continue to talk and share information, and I think that's the way it should be in this country. I wish he would have acted that way in the beginning instead of creating a scene like this.
Well, you're saying that nobody knew who he was, and if they did, he would have been treated differently. And you just heard his comment. He said, if this is the way they treat a U.S. senator, you can only imagine how others are being treated in these deportation efforts. What would you say to that, Secretary?
Yeah. I think his statement is absolutely ridiculous. This man burst into a room, started advancing towards the podium, interrupting an opening statement, elevating his voice, shouting questions. People tried to stop him from interrupting the press conference. He refused and continued to lunge towards the podium, and that is when he was removed from the room. So the way that he acted was completely inappropriate. It wasn't becoming a U.S. senator or a public official, and perhaps he wanted the scene, and that's what he wanted. But I think the American people are sick of this kind of action. I think the American people are tired of this. They just want the truth, and they just want to know what's happening, and that's what we were trying to provide.
We just had a Democrat and a Republican panelists, and both sides agreed that they felt this was unbecoming behavior of a United States senator. But apparently Chuck Schumer doesn't feel that way. Senator Schumer, here's what he just had to say. Watch.
Mr. President, I just saw something that sickened my stomach. The manhandling of a United States senator. We need immediate answers to what the hell went on.
How can these federal agents get away with this? Is the President of the United States telling folks to go down and start arresting United States senators?
What would you say to them, Secretary?
Well, he was never arrested. He was never arrested, and nobody knew who he was when he came into the room creating a scene. He was removed from the room, and yes, they started to put handcuffs on him when he finally identified himself, and then that was stopped. They said he wants to talk to you. I said, sure, I'd love to sit down and visit. So we went to a room and visited for 10 or 15 minutes and then exchanged phone numbers. So I just, I'm so sick of the politics, Martha. This is literally people's lives. We have criminal gangs and terrorists out on our streets that we're trying to remove from Los Angeles. I mean, people just need to get over themselves and have the backs of law enforcement and this president who just want to clean up America and make it safe again.
Yeah, we watched your whole news conference, and then Todd Lyons speaking as well, the director of ICE, who we've spoken with many times, talking about the importance of removing these criminals from the streets. I thought it was very interesting, this exchange with Peter Doocy and President Trump about, who is being detained, who's being arrested, and maybe some changes perhaps to some of the, how some of these situations will be handled. Listen to what President Trump just said about the people who work in the farmlands in California. Watch.
Our farmers are being hurt badly by, they have very good workers. They've worked for them for 20 years. They're not citizens, but they've turned out to be, great. And we're going to have to do something about that.
So what are your thoughts on that? Because we've been, hearing that anyone who's here illegally will be removed because they've broken the law by crossing over. And obviously the president is citing at least one situation where he wants to see a different approach.
Well, the president wants to enforce the law, and people who've come into this country illegally have broken the law. There are Department of Labor programs and regulations that we can utilize, and he recognizes that there's a very big difference between those who perpetuate criminal activity and are in trafficking and drug trafficking, and those who have been here who want to be a part of the American dream. I still continue to encourage people to self-deport. Go out there and self-deport. When you get home, you will have the opportunity to receive $1,000 from the United States of America. We will pay your way, and you'll get the chance to come back here legally through these programs that we can utilize. And that's what the president wants to see. He recognizes that they're good people, but there needs to be application of the law in this country. That's what he ran on and what he'll deliver.
Are you seeing an increase in that? Because I heard you make that point today as well, Secretary Noem, and I thought, is that part of these operations? Obviously, you want to get these criminals out of the country who you have detainers for, but do you also want to encourage people to be a little bit jarred by this and say, you know what, I'm going to do the app and I'm going to take the $1,000 and I'm going to get out of here?
Well, I want to remind you, Martha, that who's elevating these tensions are these professional violent protesters. People have the right to peacefully protest, but then you have professionals that have been funded by NGOs, some of them by former government grants under Joe Biden. They've used those dollars to train people to come in and commit acts of violence during these peaceful protests. So there's a big difference between peaceful protests and what these professionals are doing. That's what's escalated the tensions. All we've been doing is enforcing the law, and I would tell everybody, if you wait till we arrest you and remove you from the country, you will never get the chance to come back to America. Right. The president's been very clear on that. So self-deport, and then we will help facilitate you coming back here legally and getting the chance to live the American dream.
Are you seeing an acceleration of people taking that option in the course of last week?
We are. I would encourage everybody, download the CBP Home app. Download that app. We will buy your plane ticket. We'll help you get home. When you get there, you'll get $1,000, and we'll facilitate you getting a process to where you can be here and be a part of our future.
Well, I know you talked a lot about the attacks on your officers and concussions and having pieces of cement thrown at them, which is just absolutely horrible criminal behavior that we've watched play out here. So we wish them well out there on the streets, and we thank you for being with us today. Thank you, Secretary.
Yeah.
I'm Senator Alex Padilla. I have questions for the Secretary. This is how this administration responds to a senator with a question. You can only imagine what they're doing to farm workers, to cooks.
It wasn't becoming a U.S. senator or a public official, and perhaps he wanted the scene. But I think the American people are sick of this kind of action.
And this is not what democracies do. It's despicable. It's disgusting. It is so un-American.
Okay, let's bring in our panel. Fox News contributor Ben Domenech, Olivia Beavers of the Wall Street Journal, and Democratic strategist Megan Hayes. And good evening to all of you. Thanks for joining us on a very busy evening of news. Let's play the video, unexpectedly. Let's play the video here that I think that everyone is going to be analyzing for the next couple of days, including us here on the panel. And there are a couple different angles here, but we're going to look at it from this angle here. It looks like the senator shows up to this press conference unannounced, uninvited, begins interrupting, asking questions, and the Secret Service that's assigned to Kristi Noem here removes him and cuffs him and puts him on the ground. Seems like a lot went wrong here.
Yes. Well, I think certainly this was a situation that went wrong from the perspective of a lot of different sides here, but one in particular that I just have to point out is I think that the senator wanted something to happen here. There's a reason why you don't start this situation by identifying yourself. There's a reason why you don't have in advance a conversation saying, hey, I'm going to be here at the same time Kristi Noem is here. I want to sit down and have a conversation with her about what's going on in California. He claims that he didn't know that she just happened to be in the building at the same time for a press conference. He interrupts the press conference. He does so without announcing who he actually is. And Secret Service, I think, is on, quite frankly, they are on a little bit of alert here because of the way that ICE agents have been targeted, the way that the president himself has been targeted, the way that they feel the obligation to protect their principal. And so I actually don't judge the agents in this situation for reacting the way they did to someone who they clearly did not recognize, who was not wearing anything identifying.
He wasn't wearing his Senate pin.
And he was not wearing a Senate pin. And a little thing about that, Aisha, as you know, if you wear a pin that is round or similarly shaped as a man in the early days of a new Congress, you will frequently get called representative or congressman, as I have been on multiple occasions.
And maybe they just didn't know who he was. By the way, we did reach out to the senator's office to see if he had a comment or wanted to come on the show. They did not call us back. Just wanted to point that out. We tried. Megan, Secretary Noem today called this political theater. A lot of folks from the administration are calling it that. I want to ask you about that because Democrats, this party, has been trying to say that we need more fighters out there. We need people to go after this Trump administration, encouraging brawlers to primary incumbents. Are we going to see more of this? Is this the kind of thing we're going to continue to see, more disruptions and moments that wind up like this?
Look, if you talk to the Democratic leaders in some of these blue states, they have reached out to the administration. They have reached out to DHS and Kristi Noem, and they're not getting calls back. So if he is in a federal building where he had to go through security and all of the other things, and knew that Kristi Noem was going to be there once he was waiting for a different briefing, he is taking the opportunity to ask a question. I don't fault him for doing that. This is a complete overreaction.
What do you think he thought was going to happen?
I think he thought he was going to ask a question and there would be an exchange back and forth, and he would leave. That is normally what would happen in this situation with protesters. I saw it when I worked for Joe Biden. When he would get protested at events, the same thing would happen. He'd have a back and forth discussion, and then he'd meet with them afterwards. And that is what happened after he was forcefully taken out and then handcuffed outside, which we have all seen the video of that as well. I just think the American people deserve better than all of this on both sides. The American people want different. This is going to end in a really bad way, and I think that we need to figure out how to de-escalate this on both sides.
Olivia, I want you to follow up on that. Yeah. She just said this is going to end in a really bad way. Well, obviously, Democrats on Capitol Hill were enraged today. There was a lot of tension between House Republicans, House Democrats, and then also over in the Senate. And they're demanding investigations, although they're in the minority.
They're in the minority, which means they're going to have a hard hill upwards. And Republicans, not in the Senate, but when you ask some Republicans, they said he was disruptive, it was his fault. Democrats argued that he did identify himself as a senator. And so there's a lot of confusion about what the agents knew and how they handled it. But some Republican senators were also taken aback. I think there's something about an image of a U.S. senator being pushed to the ground and handcuffed that did not sit well with colleagues of his. And so I don't know that you're going to see an investigation. You had Mike Johnson saying that what Padilla was doing was censure-worthy as House Democrats passed behind him and shouted, "You're lying." So it definitely did not seem to de-escalate what is already a very escalating situation in L.A.
So today, President Trump actually talked about how he might change his deportation policy for a select group of people. Watch this exchange with Peter Ducey.
Did you change your mind about targeting in California farmers and people in the hotel and leisure business?
Our farmers are being hurt badly by, You know, they have very good workers. They've worked for them for 20 years. They're not citizens, but they've turned out to be, great. And we're going to have to do something about that. We can't take farmers and take all their people and send them back.
Ben, I mean, these are the kinds of people that these protesters and Democrats are talking about, trying to save from deportation.
Well, what they've been trying to highlight, of course, is people getting arrested who are waiting in line at Home Depot and the like. But I think that, the real reason that this administration has had the early experience with this that they have is that they decided to lean into the far more popular decision to arrest people who had criminal activity either in the past or here in America that could be something beyond just being here illegally. That's why they've had the kind of success politically in most polls that you've seen to this point. The backlash that I think is coming is from these more sympathetic cases. That's what Democrats are going to lean into. And how the White House responds to it, I mean, the president, quite frankly, there sounded more moderate than he has in the past when it comes to immigration enforcement. It'll be interesting to see whether that leads to some sort of change in policy. At the same time, if Stephen Miller and others who are demanding more deportations faster from, an effort that they believe has not gone fast enough.
Megan, this should be welcoming news for Democrats, right?
Right, and also the polling that came out today, Trump is upside down on immigration, and people are not thinking it's favorably. But to your point about policy change, this is what we need Congress to act on, both Democrats and Republicans. This has been an issue for 60 years. You cannot legislate immigration through executive order. It's not going to work. It did not work for the Biden administration. It will not work for the Trump administration. It gets too extreme each time. Congress needs to do something, and they need to work together to do it.
And they won't.
I was just
so
looking
many
at
attempts.
Olivia, who is smirking right now, because Congress getting to work seems,
Even like
far-fetched.
Republicans not too long ago thought they had a deal and agreement to move forward. Trump came out against it, said it didn't go far enough on immigration. It's really tough, it seems, these years for immigration legislation to move forward in a way that addresses some of the systemic
100%.
issues.
These people work for the American people, and if the American people start voting in people who are going to work for them, they can get something done.
If you want to put this back to the ballot box test again in the midterms, I think you will have a similar experience that you had
He's
last
right
time
about
around.
that. There are a lot of Americans out there that are okay with the current deportation policies.
Now Democrat senators are joining the riots. Alex Padilla, the senator from California, got handcuffed inside of a federal building this afternoon for lunging at a cabinet secretary. Kristi Noem was in Los Angeles giving a press conference about the riots when the senator barged in and ran at her, yelling and screaming.
Exaggerating and embellishing. Sir, hands up. I'm Senator Alex Padilla. I have questions for the secretary, because the fact of the matter is a half a dozen violent criminals that you're rotating on your hands off.
Many of our ICE agents have been docked.
On the ground. Hands behind your back. Hands behind your back.
If you let my hands go, I put them behind my back.
All right. Cool. One hand. Lay flat. Lay flat.
Other hand, sir. Other hand.
Democrats must have known about the stunt ahead of time, because within minutes, Newsom yelled dictator, and Congress burst out of their offices.
I just saw something that sickened my stomach. The manhandling of a United States senator. We need immediate answers to what the hell went on.
As if made to kneel before the authority of the executive, because he was so-called disrespectful. If you could make Alex Padilla forcibly kneel before this executive, when does it stop?
As a combat veteran, I want to know what this House is going to do, but because a senior senator was attacked, illegally attacked, and drugged to the ground.
MSNBC's acting like Trump fired on Fort Sumter.
This is a big escalation of what has been happening in California. Born to immigrants, he himself is the pride of much of the Latino community in the Los Angeles area. To see him manhandled in this way, like a common everyday protester, is going to be particularly jarring for many who are watching from California.
The senator wasn't arrested, wasn't charged, didn't go to jail, but was able to arrange a press conference immediately after.
If this is how the Department of Homeland Security responds to a senator with a question, you can only imagine what they're doing to farm workers, to cooks, to day laborers out in the Los Angeles community and throughout California and throughout the country.
Was he almost crying? I think he was. Noem says if he wanted to ask her a question, he could have just called.
You know, I had a conversation with the senator after this. We sat down for 10 to 15 minutes and talked about the fact that nobody knew who he was. He didn't say who he was, that until he was already had been lunging forward and people were trying to detain him for quite a period of time, and that this, you know, we're leaders, we're public servants. And if he had requested a meeting, I would have loved to have sat down and had a conversation with him. That coming into a press conference like this is political theater.
The FBI says Padilla never identified himself and wasn't wearing his Senate security pin. And no one recognized him because no one knows who Senator Padilla is. He's the least recognized senator in the entire Senate. I'm sorry. So a guy wearing street clothes barges into a press conference just yards away from a cabinet secretary and starts lunging at her and screaming. Secretary Noem's security saw him as a threat, and he pushed the federal officers back. He could have been a stalker, an impersonator, or any yahoo off the street. Trump was just shot. You can't have random people lunging at cabinet secretaries. These are the people who say no one's above the law. They arrested Trump 4 times and charged him with 94 crimes, but they think being pushed out of a room crossed a line? Come on. Anyone else would have been treated the same way. Police were just doing their jobs and removing a protester, and now Democrats want to hold hearings.
Will you commit on the record to subpoenaing Kristi Noem because a U.S. senator was just thrown to the ground and detained in his own
Democrats can't follow the rules, can't follow the law, can't follow the rules.
Shut up.
Just shut up.
No, you don't. No, you're not going to tell me to shut up.
How do you get him in order? You're running for the
not like that.
He has been out of order 6 times. He's trying to get on MSNBC. You probably knocked. I get it. Somebody off MSNBC to get on there.
I think because he's been arrested as a former Antifa member, right?
Back to order, Ms. Green. Go.
He's a former Antifa member, Mr. Chairman.
You got
no
it.
surprise.
Who's a former Antifa member? Me?
Yeah, you.
Now, we don't know what was in the water in D.C. today, but Bobby Kennedy should test it. Padilla is trying to act tough for his base, raise money, and get handcuffed so he can call Trump Mussolini. They'll spit this clip out, and the media's going to run with it, but it's not going to get any traction. No one takes these people seriously anymore. The man looks like Code Pink, and men should never act like that. Lunging at women, screaming hysterically, close to tears. Get a hold of yourself, Senator. You're a member of the world's greatest deliberative body. You're supposed to move the country through soaring oratory and eloquent speeches. Or you write laws. That's literally your job, to write laws. He's gone loco. Tampon, JB Back Ribs, and Hochul were all on Capitol Hill begging for Homeland to arrest him.
If Tom Homeland comes to Albany to arrest me, I'll say, go for it.
If Tom Homeland were to come to try to arrest us, I can say, first of all, that he can try.
Democrats say Trump has an enemies list, but they're all begging to get on it. Who begs to get on a dictator's hit list? Exactly. They don't really think he's a dictator. They just want to pretend to be human shields for illegals. Tampon says we just don't know history.
I don't call federal law enforcement officers Gestapo. You were recently quoted. Where's the apology?
Donald Trump.
Oh, no, Donald Trump didn't. Listen, Donald Trump's not here.
Yeah.
You are, Governor.
Yeah.
You're a big boy. Put your big boy pants on.
I would ask, don't wear masks. Identify who you are. Don't pull up and
Governor, you called them Gestapo. Will you apologize for that?
And don't pull people.
Will you apologize for that?
Congressman, my job, I'm a history teacher.
Okay, so you won't.
Democrats called the L.A. riots the Mexican-American War, then changed it to the Civil War, and now they're saying it's actually World War II. And L.A. is just like the beaches of Normandy.
When you compare the old films of the Gestapo grabbing people off the streets of Poland, and you compare them to those nondescript thugs who grabbed that graduate student, it does look like a Gestapo operation. It does look like the Gestapo. You know, my dad served in the Second World War. He fought the Nazis
in northern Africa. He fought the Nazis on the Italian peninsula. And I think he's looking down right now and he's happy that I'm fighting today's Nazis.
One Democrat can't decide whether to call ICE Nazis or slave catchers.
If we just roll this clock on the wall back 75 years, we'd be looking at a time in Nazi Germany where people ran around with signs like this new ICE sign that says, report all foreign invaders to ICE, with Uncle Sam there holding up the sign. This could have been a Gestapo member 75 years ago, report all Jews. 100 years before that, it could be a plantation owner that said, report all Negroes and all coloreds and all those who are from Africa, because they are disrupting our country. So let's not get it twisted here.
Do Democrats have anything else to say besides racist Nazi? If I go on Fox, both shows, and call everyone racist Nazis day after day after day, you'd think I'd lost my mind. I'd probably get fired. Homeless guys talk like this. Do Democrats have Tourette's? Nazi, racist, Nazi, racist. They're not even making any sense. They say they only want to deport the criminals, but then they won't hold them in their jails when they get arrested. They release them before ICE can show up. Democrats don't even know who they have in their own states. Hochul just found out she's protecting a rapist.
Do you know who Sakir Khan is? You should, as the governor of New York State. Do you know?
Refresh my recollection.
He was an illegal migrant in New York. And do you know what crime he committed in addition to being here illegally?
No, I do not.
You do not. This was widely reported. He found a 15-year-old girl, threatened her with a metal pole, told her to get into the back seat of his car. He took her clothes off, and he violently raped her in Albany, New York.
Albany's the capital. It's where the governor lives and works, and she's never heard of this case. Jazzy Crockett says, who cares about migrant rapists? She only wants to talk about one thing.
They love to cherry pick. They can find, any one person that has been killed. And if they've been killed by an immigrant, then God darn it, every single immigrant is going out and they are killers. And that is the problem. But they don't want to talk about white supremacy.
We don't want to talk about white supremacy? It's all we've been talking about. Remember, working out's white supremacy. Being on time is white supremacy. Merit is white supremacy. The Redskins logo, yep, white supremacy. And not admitting you're a white supremacist means you're a white supremacist. LA Mayor Karen Bass says she's okay with a few migrant killers on the loose because she just needs a babysitter.
We'll feel it in the construction industry. We'll feel it in hospitality. We'll feel it at grocery stores. People will begin to notice. You think about the mothers who have nannies and housekeepers. They will feel it when there's nobody to do childcare and there's nobody to take their kids to school. You will feel it when your gardener goes away and you don't know where he or she is.
Oh my gosh, my garden. Who's going to water it? There are over 300 million people in this country. I don't think I'll ever be able to find anybody who knows how to use a hose. So Democrats are letting their cities burn, their stores get looted, and they're lunging at federal officials just so they can keep their housekeepers, gardeners, and babysitters. They're calling ICE the Gestapo and Trump a king because they want their berries picked.
No Kings protests planned across the country on Saturday as well. What are your thoughts on those?
What do they go? No Kings?
No Kings.
I don't feel like a king. I have to go through hell to get stuff approved. A king would say, I'm not going to get this. A king would have never had the California mandate to even be talking to him. He wouldn't have to call up Mike Johnson and Thune and say, fellas, you got to pull this off, and after years we get it done. No, we're not a king. We're not a king at all.
A king would have Senator Padilla thrown in a dungeon. But he's not in a dungeon. He sat down with the secretary for a while, and then he held a press conference, and then he went on CNN and MSNBC. If Trump's a king, he's doing a terrible job.
Well, our next guest has something to say to J.B. Pritzker. He is Joe Abraham, the father of Katie Abraham, who was killed by the illegal referenced in a back and forth that we'll play in just a moment. With J.B. Pritzker, and my staff will tell me when we have that, but also with me is Florida Congressman and gubernatorial candidate Byron Donalds. Byron, let's go to you first. This situation today, I want to talk about this Padilla stunt. I'm going to talk about what you did on Capitol Hill. But this Padilla stunt, he barges in L.A., and after he's talking over her, Bill Malugin has the original video, after he's talking over her, and then they try to start ushering him out, that's when he said, I'm a sitting U.S. senator. I'm a U.S. senator. But initially he walked in without a lapel pin, without, he was in casual clothing, a jacket and a polo or something like that. But he didn't want anyone to think he was a senator until the drama started to really unfold. Your reaction to that?
My reaction is that Senator Padilla was really trying to make a name for himself. Nobody even knows who the man is nationwide until right now. And let's be very clear, I was taught at a very young age by my mom, if you decide to push your way through police officers or security details, then you take your life into your own hands. They are there to protect Secretary Gnome. We all know the security details of our cabinet secretaries. You don't see members of Congress pushing their way through unless they want to put themselves on TV, put themselves on camera. So that was a stunt. And secondly, I will tell you, this administration led by President Trump, they are actually the most transparent administration we've ever seen. You could never get an answer out of Joe Biden or his cabinet. So if he wanted answers, all he had to do was ask or schedule a meeting. He didn't want to do that. He wanted to make a name for himself, and he looked ridiculous in the process. The American people have to understand, these Democrats, they just want limelight. They don't want real solutions to fix the problems brought by Joe Biden and the Democrats.
Yeah, well, they want to cement their narrative and going into this weekend of protests. They're authoritarian. They're trying to arrest Democrat senators, throwing them on the ground. There was someone who I think Ben Rhodes even said he thought it was racial. Okay. I mean, it's just ludicrous. Mr. Abram, we are so sorry for the loss of your daughter. I know today had to be very hard listening to Governor Pritzker. We have the soundbite where he was asked about your daughter and her allegedly being killed by an illegal immigrant. Watch.
Earlier this year in Governor Pritzker's Illinois, a previously deported illegal alien who had re-entered the country was allegedly drunk driving near the University of Illinois when he struck a car sitting at a red light and then fled the scene. The crash killed 2 young women, including Katie Abraham. Governor Pritzker, do you agree that this illegal alien who killed Katie should never have been in the United States in the first place?
If the person is a criminal of any sort, then they ought to be.
So that person had a right to be in the United States.
They ought to be given their due process rights, and they ought to be convicted.
Mr. Edwards, he could not say that that illegal alien shouldn't be in the United States. Mr. Abram. Mr. Abram.
Yeah, it was definitely a tough day. I want to thank Chairman Comer and the American Border Story for helping to pull this sort of together. But what struck me, or what I found interesting throughout the whole proceedings, was that it seemed like they wanted everything to happen on the back end versus the front end, right? If you want to bring in immigrants, which I'm all for. My parents were immigrants, so I'm all for it, however many you want to bring in. But you got to do it in the front end and not have unaudited folks just coming in. And then when something happens, okay, now they're a criminal, and now we'll remove them because we didn't know who they were in the first place. But when you're on the back end, it's so much tougher to clean up, and the carnage you leave, the wake that's left behind. I mean, me and my family, the rest of my life, I've got to live with this. I got to live without my baby girl, Katie. And she was, by the way, Laura, a one of a kind, a beautiful soul, a witty girl, just would have been so successful in everything she would have done. Whatever it is, Katie had it, believe me. And this world, to me, will be a less interesting place now that she's not in it.
Joe, Governor Pritzker's answer, did that give you any sense that to him, the governor of your state, that her life mattered? Because Senator Padilla is being, treated the way he was. They rallied around that real fast. That was an outrage of epic proportion for them today. But did your daughter's life seem to matter very much to him?
No, I don't think it mattered to most of them in that committee. And unfortunately, if they knew Katie, it it would have been a different vibe. It would have been a different perspective from them, right? They don't know her. She's just sort of a collateral damage. I've just got to sort of, suck it up and move on, and it's for the greater good. And Katie lays on the altar of, I don't really know what anymore. I don't even know what's going on. Other than that, it was a Wild West. And again, look, just get a process. Do it properly. Audit the folks that are coming in. Like, this person didn't have to be in this country, didn't have to be in our state. And, from what I can tell and everything I've heard from law enforcement is that, he wasn't a productive person. He wasn't really trying to be a good citizen. I'm just not sure exactly what we're doing, I guess is my point. And that's where I say the front end needs to get taken care of and audited. And you don't need laws to do that. You need a good process.
Well, Congressman, I know you care. I know you care about the victims of illegal alien crime. And if someone doesn't respect our laws coming into the country, what does that say about them while they're in the country? I don't care if you're a cook or a this or that. You did not do it the right way. Period. End of story.
You're absolutely correct. And to Mr. Abraham, I got a chance to meet him before our hearing started, and so sorry for his loss, but it's something that just did not need to happen. And you had these Democrat governors who were trying to place blame on everybody else except for their party and their leadership that opened up our borders to criminals and people who have hurt the American people, all for the sake of their religion on open borders. It is a terrible policy. It makes no sense. It takes away resources from so many Americans. And then the worst of it all, you have the story of Mr. Abraham, of Jocelyn Nungary, and so many others, of Rachel Morin, who have lost their lives. The Democrats need to get their acts together and live in the land of the real and not this political landscape that has really hurt and victimized so many Americans. This is why their poll numbers suck. This is why they will continue to lose. And if they want to rally around Alex Padilla, be my guest, but the American people simply are not with you.
Yeah, he's the real victim here today. Okay, none of the families who show up in these hearings. The senator is the real victim. Joe, Congressman, both of you, thank you.
If Trump's a king, he's doing a terrible job. Kayleigh McEnany is a former White House press secretary and co-host of Outnumbered. What did you think about Senator Padilla's stunt today?
It was despicable. It's planned. It's coordinated. He wants to be the face of resistance. And he has competition, right? He has Gavin Newsom doing an 8-minute bizarre robotic direct-to-cam. He had to outdo that. He has Tim Walz, shouting about Elon's stocks, and he can't wait for them to go down and has an app on his phone. He has congressmen storming detention facilities where there are illegal immigrants. He's got competition. He wanted to resist. I thought you were spot on, Jesse, when you talked about how in the halls of Congress, they all ran out. Chuck Schumer found that microphone rather quickly. Maxwell Frost picked right up on it. It's as if they were all in this coordinated plan. But where was this plan when Lincoln Riley was killed? And you at Laken Riley, and Joe Biden went out and called her Lincoln Riley. That's the only time he said her name, when he was forced to do so by Marjorie Taylor Greene. Where were they with Rachel Morin, with Jocelyn Nungary? They couldn't find the microphone then. They couldn't find the microphone for U.S. citizens, everyday Americans killed by illegal immigrants. But boy, did they find that microphone when Alex Padilla performed a stunt. It's astroturfing, Jesse.
Do they want to get handcuffed and mugshot? Is that the deal? Because they think their popularity is going to spike the way Trump's did, and then they can say, "Hey, I told you he's a king. He's arresting politicians," even though they arrested Trump.
I really think there is something to that, and I know that sounds crazy and outlandish, but when Tom Homan mentioned the arrest and potentially officials, how quickly did Gavin Newsom say, "Bring it on, guys"? And then you watch them in front of Congress one by one. Bring it on, bring it on, bring it on. They all want that mugshot. But here's the thing, Jesse. They can't get a mugshot like President Trump. The way he looked in the mirror, and it's become so iconic. I don't think any one of those could pull off the handsome mugshot that President Trump did.
Maybe Gavin Newsom, but it would take quite a bit of hair and makeup. I want to show you some sound. There was one of your favorite congressmen, Raskin. He's walking along, and he was confronted by a journalist. I mean, if they're going to confront Gnome, they're going to get confronted too. Watch how this shook out.
Hey, Congressman, quick question for you. So you initially originally... Hi, my name is Nick. Nick, nice to meet you. I'm from X. I'm from X. So I have to ask you, you said Kilmar Abrego Garcia. You voiced a lot of support for him originally. Now he's been charged with facilitating the transport of... Do you get due process? Do you believe in due process? Wait, so you come in... You answer me one question. Okay, what was the process that he used to get into the United States? Was it illegal? Did he come into... So you're not going to answer my questions. I answered yours. 50, you stupid. You didn't answer a single one. You're a moron, okay? As well as a fascist. Go back to your fascist.
How do you think Raskin conducted himself there?
Very poorly. These guys, they had a love affair with Kilmar Abrego Garcia. And then all of a sudden, Chuck Schumer said, no more visits, let's not do this anymore. And then they run away. That was horribly done. It's not what I would have advised as a comms professional. But what do they have left? They chose someone without doing opposition research. There were court documents about his interactions with his wife, domestic violence. They didn't do their research, Jesse.
All right. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. I don't even know what that means, but I think it makes sense in this episode. It sounds fine. Kaylee, good to see you, as always.
Well, welcome back. The votes are in, and the vice chair, well, he's out. DNC's David Hogg announcing on X that he's stepping away from his role as vice chair after 75% of the members voted to redo their vice chair election to unseat him. So joining me now is the Ruthless podcast team, Josh Holmes, Comfortably Smug, John Ashbrook, and Michael Duncan. So, fellas, I think that the easy thing to do, and what would certainly be tempting, is to laugh at David Hogg. But actually, I think the party to be mocked more readily than Hogg is the DNC for this young whippersnapper coming in and trying to mix it up there at the DNC.
Well, you're absolutely right, Will, and this is a very serious situation. Obviously, they've taken the Hogg out at the DNC. Many members, we can reliably report, thought it was overexposed, the Hogg overexposed. Many people thought it was he was too in your face, shall we say. But be that as it may, younger generation, he brought a different sort of genre, and they were uncomfortable with it.
Well, here's the thing is, so for 1 second, it was probably about a full second, the DNC was like, how do we appeal to young males? And like, also, it is against our rules to be a young male. You got to go, David. It's incredible. You cannot make it up.
Yeah, their problem is very obvious, Will. And, it's not dissimilar to other situations out there, like the Indianapolis Colts are a team without a leader. They don't have a quarterback. Democrats do not have a leader. They don't have a quarterback. And so I'm very, very down on their season to come.
All I would point out, Will, is the Cincinnati Bengals just had one of their premier defensive players not walk out of mini camp. So I would just point that out for my friend here, John Ashbrook.
Just for the audience, a lot of internal shots taking place as they speak here. That's a lot of inside baseball trash talk happening at the table there at Ruthless. But Holmes, I want you to know you're not slick. It was smooth, but not slick. I got you, the hog in your face. I know what I pick up, and so does the audience. We pick up what you're putting down. Okay.
I don't know what you're talking about, Will.
I know
Would you have
guys
expected Democrats to cut off their hog? I wouldn't have.
I don't know where Will's head's at, Smug. Frankly, we're just bantering back and forth, commentary on the day.
I just was thinking about, Holmes comes in with a nice little dainty layup, and Smug comes in and slams dunk it on everyone's face there with that one. There's no gray area with what he had to say. Hey, you guys have been talking about this at Ruthless. This is from the protests, the riots in L.A., and this is the comeback from one of the kids facing a police skirmish line.
As long as you feel okay, that's your job. Racist, imperialist state. That's all you, man. You know what that even means? Yes, I'm in college.
Yes, B, I'm in college, he says.
Yeah.
But by the way, here's the question for Ruthless. Is that kid or the kid making the face at the young black woman trying to get to work who responds, oh, work? More symbolic of this protest and riot?
No, of course not. Like, these people are professional protesters, Will. These are grad students who for 6 months studied Marxist theory, and now they have the summer off to practice it, right? And so now you're going to lecture a working person, a cop, right? A African-American woman just trying to get to work to feed her family, and you're going to lecture them about work. What is that?
The man bun was a nice touch.
Yeah, it was so good.
But hold on a minute. As long as that lady is allowed to go to work, the oceans will continue to rise. Climate change will not be solved unless she is not able to employ herself and fund her family's needs.
Yeah.
Now, how about a bong load?
It would be funny if it weren't basically the same arguments being made from Capitol Hill among Democrats. It's not radical anymore, as we laid out at the top of the show. It's actually common. This is what we hear, not just from those insane people on your screen right now, but from elected representatives in Washington, D.C. Okay, Ellie, bring it on out. I want to throw this open to you guys. There's a new study out from Yelp, okay? And it was in the New York Post. Best French fries, fellas. And there's a shocking result. Okay, I've got French fries here from McDonald's, Chick-fil-A, Shake Shack. I don't know. Oh, that's In-N-Out. Okay, here's what's shocking. You know what came in second to last? McDonald's. And everybody watching. No. Yeah. Doesn't everybody says it's number one. You know what got number one? In-N-Out.
Yeah.
In-N-Out, number one.
Ooh, there might be some West Coast bias in that.
Yeah.
In the McDonald's fry, especially when you pair it with the fountain Coke, fantastic. It's as good as it gets. Chick-fil-A, my favorite situation in terms of a meal. But in the fry category, also you ought to throw Arby's in there. Those curly fries.
Well,
Holmes,
I
it got
might be
eighth.
a little bit.
It got eighth. Arby's.
I might be a little selfish here, Will, but I'm going to go ahead and play to my hometown and say the best fry in America is Indianapolis's own Steak and Shake. Beef tallow fries.
Well, I'm going to have this fry from Shake Shack. Thanks for being with us. The Five.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.